Gazing down at the sacrum stone, Cessair muttered to himself. Over the weeks since its retrieval, he'd fed nearly 100 sacrifices to the pit. The blood had remained unfettered in that pit, whipped into a frenzy as it charged the stone. The prison now lay empty again, save for one defenceless corsair, yet the stone seemed to be missing something. Cessair retreated back to his workshop, resolving to read deeper into his tome. His druids and sacrifices all offered, Sinis was devoid of life, save for his own and the life of the crippled prisoner, whom he had spared in return for the location of more sacrifices. Deep in the scripture, he found an errant page, different from the rest. Removing the page, it bore only a few words. Seek the beast of the crimson moon. It seemed these words had manifested from shadow. Cessair had read this tome many times, much of its writing was burned into his mind. He knew little of the beasts of this isle, but thinking back to the Wanderer, he didn't see many options. Gathering his weapons and resources, Cessair endeavoured to travel south, in the footsteps of the Wanderer, to seek the beast of the crimson moon. Before his departure, he dragged the corsair he had so graciously spared to the edge of Sinis. Cessair ended his pain quickly. In his mind's eye, he envisioned a beaming light cutting through the ash. With a complex conjuration spell drawing upon the blood of the sacrifice, Cessair pulled forth a beacon, a light to guide him home. Welcome back to Season 3 of Settlers. Today in Episode 5 we'll be building the beacon. This is an incredibly simple design to allow Cessair to find his way home. The requirements are on screen now, and again, it's very simple. If you want the full effect as shown in this video, you will need the Pippi and Shani's stuff mods. So without further ado, let's get started. I began with the base plate, which was a simple single-tier circular base plate held up by pillars. From here, I raised the walls up one tile and built an exterior ring of ceilings, onto which I placed roof pieces to curve downwards into the base of the beacon. Next, I used stairs to execute the pillar trick, allowing pillars to visually support the outer corners of each square tile. This isn't a necessity, and if you don't like how it looks, you can skip this section. Once I'd finished the pillars, I built another set of walls on the interior, one tile high, and again used roof pieces, this time to curve into the circular hole at the top of the beacon. I also used wedge pieces atop that hole to create spiked accents leading away from it, sort of like the light is bursting out of the beacon. From there, I placed an Eldarian brazier and used the Pippi move tool to scale it up to fill the interior space. To finish this beacon off, I spawned a skybeam from Shani's stuff, dyed it an eerie blue, and again used the move tool and ghost mode to place it beneath the base plate of the structure, thus finishing off the beacon. Glancing across the ashen wastes, Cessair could still see the beam of his beacon cutting through the sky. His early sacrifices held such momentous weight, yet barely an hour later, he struggled to even recall cutting down the final prisoner. The only scant reminder of that sacrifice, the fresh blood across his hands. Nevertheless, he pressed on southward, following in the footsteps of the Wanderer to whom he had granted passage. Southward still, past the strange beasts and shattered landscapes, Cessair discovered a ruined citadel deep in the wastes. He'd found little else of note, and this place seemed to hum with an eldritch energy. Though decimated, he hoped to find something of worth within. Halfway through the desolated citadel, dodging mutated men and foul demons, Cessair stumbled across a familiar-looking figure. Strewn across the floor, the hooded form of the Wanderer lay cold and lifeless. His pilgrimage had failed, presumably, as his sight was still intact. Cessair knew not to make the same mistake. Eventually emerging into what seemed to be an inner courtyard, past the incandescent corridors, the centre platform rising from the ash below called out. Thereupon sat a gargantuan beast, an ancient monstrosity, a bizarre amalgamation of flesh. Cessair could hardly bear to look upon it, yet this must be the beast his tome spoke of. Approaching cautiously, dagger at the ready, Cessair knew the beast would likely not give its life willingly. Abominations like these fed on the arcane, there was little worth in using sorcery. Grasping his dagger tight, his mind flashed back to the rotting Wanderer as his hand trembled, preparing to strike.